Okay, let's keep practicing with for loops and trying to understand them a little better. Okay, so remember we have for and then we have a variable. We can call it whatever. Let's say I. In range, let's just do 5. And what I want us to look at here is what is the value of I? Like where is that existing? How does it get a value? So let's just say the value of I is, and then we'll print I. Okay, so let's look at how this iterates. So how many times do you expect this loop to iterate? If you said 5, you were correct. What is it going to display? 0 through 4. You're correct. Okay, so let's look at it. Okay, so when this loop first iterates, its first iteration, the value of I is 0. On its second iteration, the value of I is 1, 2, 3, and 4. This could literally be called anything, okay? You know, I'm always like, it could be called pickles, because you're a weirdo. I hate pickles. I don't know why I keep doing that. Okay, so the value of pickles 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, switching it back to I, what happens if we start counting at 1? So if we put a 1 there, what is the value of these variables? So let's save and run. Okay, so we have a value of 1 to begin with because it starts counting at 1. Then second iteration is 2, third iteration is 3, fourth iteration is 4. Why didn't it iterate all the way to 5? Because remember, this is not inclusive. Okay, it stops before it gets to 5. What if we did a step value or we incremented by 2 each time? Let's see what happens with those results. We only get 2. 1 on its first iteration, and then it added 2, and we got 3, and then on its next iteration, 2 plus 3 would have been 5, and it said, oop, 5 is too big, gotta stop. Okay, so hopefully that helps you understand more what that variable means. Let's take a closer look at range. In your shell, we're not going to do this in a script. In their shell, let's type list range 4. Okay, and this returns a list, which we're going to talk about in a future chapter, that tells us all the potential values of that. List range 4. If we did list range 1, 4, it returns 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so this is telling you what behind the scenes what's happening with range. If we did range 1, 10, 2, okay, it gives us those values. It started counting at 1 and then it stopped before it got to 10. Since the range function gives us a sequence of numbers, and a regular string just gives us a sequence of characters, I wonder if we can do something with letters instead of numbers. Let's do 4 letter in, and just type a phrase. So I'm going to do Stranger Things. And we'll do a colon there. And then let's just print letter. What do you think is going to happen? Let's save. And it printed vertically. So it went through this loop each time, S-T-R-A-N-G-E-R. What if I wanted to count in reverse? Let's do a for loop for I in range. Okay, so let's say I want to start at 10 and count down to 1. My first argument is where to start. My second argument is where to stop, but not inclusive. I want it to display 1, but not 0. And I want it to count down by 1 each time. Let's see if that works. We have 10, 9, 8, 7, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so let's put some of these concepts together for a larger project. Let's say that we want to prompt the user for a low number and for a high number. It's going to take all those integers in between and add them together, including the numbers that the user entered. So if they entered a 1 as the low number and a 3 as the high number, it would add 1 plus 2 plus 3 and display the total as 6. Okay, so let's start by creating some variables that will store what we asked the user for. So we're going to ask the user to enter a low number, and we're going to ask them to enter a higher number. And then let's have a variable that will store the total. Okay, so the summation of all of these integers in between. Okay, so we're going to start with a for loop. Let's use number for our variable. We could use I, we could use whatever. In range. Okay, so what's our range going to be here? Where do we want to start adding? We want to start adding with the lower, whatever the user types in for lower. We want to stop at the higher, but we want to include the higher. So how can we get the upper number inclusive? What if we did upper plus 1? Don't forget, you can still do math in those arguments. Okay, so now let's take this sum, and we want to add it to the sum plus the value of number. Okay, so we could write it like this. And then outside of our loop, let's just print the sum. Okay, so let's save that. Enter a low number 1, enter a high number 3, and we get the total 6. Okay? But how can we write this a different way? So if you look on page 67, they call them augmented assignment statements. We called them the shortcut assignment statements, and those exist in Python as well. So we could have written this equation as this. Okay, so remember, whatever your operand is, it's going to do to this on this side. Okay, so it's going to take this and add it to number and then store it back in the sum. If it was a multiplication, it would multiply number by the sum and then store it back in the sum.